Welcome to All in All.
Today, we're diving deep into something probably sitting in your kitchen cupboard right now.
Tea, yep. And believe me, it's steeped in, well, way more history, culture, and global impact than you might realize.
Absolutely. We've got this great stack of materials to guide us: history, economics, culture, even practical tips. It's quite the collection.
And our mission, as always, is to sift through it all, pull out the really interesting, important stuff for you. Think of it as the highlight reel on tea.
So where should we start? How about the very beginning? Where does tea actually come from?
Good place to start. Well, the plant itself, Camellia sinensis, it's native to East Asia.
Right, and the sort of ground zero seems to be near the source of the Irrawaddy River.
From there, it fans out, into Southeast China, Indochina, and Assam.
And we're talking ancient history here. There was physical evidence found pretty recently, right?
Yeah, in 2016, tea leaves discovered in Emperor Jing of Han's mausoleum in Xi'an.
Wow. So that suggests emperors in the Han Dynasty were drinking some form of camellia tea way back in the 2nd century BC.
Over 2,000 years ago. Just imagine.
It's wild. And the written records start popping up too. There's this contract for a youth from 59 BC.
What's that mention?
It actually lists tasks for a servant, including boiling tea and buying it at a specific place, Woyang.
So it wasn't just for the elite then. It was becoming part of, well, some people's daily lives, and cultivation records start around then too.
Exactly. Same Han Dynasty period. Meng Mountain near Chengdu is the first recorded spot for tea cultivation.
And there's that mention from the 3rd century AD, the physician Hua Tuo.
Oh yeah, suggesting drinking bitter tea helps you think better. Now, bitter tea might just mean an early way of making it, but it points to camellia tea and people noticing its effects even then.
Interesting. But it wasn't universally popular right away.
No, initially it seems it was more of a southern Chinese thing. It really took off during the Tang Dynasty.
Ah, the Tang Dynasty? That's when it exploded and spread to Korea, Japan, Vietnam.
Right. And a huge figure then was Lu Yu. His book, The Classic of Tea, basically turned tea drinking into an art form, hugely influential across East Asia.
Okay, so it starts in East Asia, becomes culturally significant there, but how does it end up, as the materials claim, profoundly shaping Western civilization? That feels like a big leap.
It's a pretty bold claim, isn't it? One source says no beverage has shaped the West more. Quite a statement. And it points to this huge role in British and American society for like 4 centuries.
4 centuries? How did that even happen?
Well, when it first hit London, mid-1600s, it was super exotic, incredibly expensive, pure luxury.
Right, so only the very wealthy could get it.
Exactly. Ladies drank it at home. Men had it in the coffee houses, along with, coffee and chocolate.
A status symbol, baby.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then the habit just grew and grew. It started actually dictating daily schedules for the upper crust in London, even Philadelphia.
Dictating schedules, wow.
Yeah, and think about the ripple effect. This massive demand wasn't just for tea leaves. It drove international trade for everything else you needed for the ritual. Sugar, fancy furniture, silver tea sets, porcelain cups, even fabrics for the rooms where you drink it.
Okay, now I see the economic engine starting up, and this is where the British Empire really steps in, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The history shows this really aggressive push, not just trading tea, but dominating the entire thing. From growing it to selling it, they poured resources into controlling every single step.
But that wasn't easy, right? The Chinese guarded their secrets pretty closely.
They did, and the British, well, they didn't really know how to grow or process it properly at first. It took them decades.
Decades of trying and failing, and probably some less than above board methods.
Definitely. We'll get to Robert Fortune's little adventure later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a long, tough process to break that Chinese hold.
So politically, what did all this maneuvering lead to?
Huge consequences. The East India Company had this monopoly on the China tea trade, and the profits were enormous. Apparently, they were so big they actually subsidized the British Parliament.
Whoa, subsidized the government.
Yep. And that same government-backed monopoly, well, it lit the fuse for a revolution over in Boston in 1773.
The Boston Tea Party. And it's crucial, as materials point out, it wasn't just the tax on tea, though that was certainly an issue.
Exactly. The bigger problem for the colonists was this powerful, government-enforced monopoly by the East India Company. They saw those tea ships arriving as, and this is a quote, the worst of plagues, a direct threat to American freedom.
So the reaction was pretty strong.
Immediate and defiant, American ports just refused the tea. One ship in New York literally turned around and went back. And then, of course, you have the iconic Boston Tea Party chucking the tea into the harbor as a direct protest against that monopoly.
Which led to massive repercussions, right? Closing the harbor, British troops.
Yeah, things escalated fast. And from that point on, refusing to drink tea became a real symbol of American patriotism.
And that has a surprisingly long tail, doesn't it? Even today, America's known more as a coffee-drinking nation.
It really does. That historical boycott seems to have played a big part in shifting preferences away from tea, despite its earlier popularity with the colonial elite. Amazing how trade disputes echo down the centuries.
Truly is. So the story continues. The British are still trying to break China's monopoly. They start introducing tea plants to India.
Yeah, Chinese small leaf types. Starting around 1836, they experimented in places like Darjeeling. That Alubari tea garden opened there in 1856, the beginning of Darjeeling tea as we know it.
And that brings us back to Robert Fortune, the secret mission guy.
Right, 1848. Sent by the East India Company basically to steal tea plants and knowledge from China. He got them out, but a lot didn't survive the trip or planting in the Himalayas.
But then they found something else.
Yes, a game changer. They discovered a different tea variety already growing wild in Assam and northeast India, the Assam type. Much hardier.
Ah, so they hybridized it.
Exactly. They crossed it with the Chinese varieties, used the Chinese processing techniques they'd finally figured out, and really kickstarted a huge industry in Assam. They even offered land grants to Europeans to get it going.
And they took this model elsewhere, too, like Sri Lanka?
Yep, introduced the industry to Ceylon, as it was called then, starting in 1867.
So back in India, tea wasn't immediately popular with everyone.
Not widely at first. Mostly the Anglo-Indians drank it. It took a massive advertising push by the India Tea Board in the 1950s to make chai the national drink it is today.
It's fascinating how tea moves beyond just trade and politics and really embeds itself in cultures. The materials talk about tea culture.
Right, it's not just the drink. It's how it's made, how it's consumed, the whole aesthetic, the social rituals.
It's like the gong fu ceremony in China. It sounds very intricate.
It is. The descriptions talk about real dedication, precise steps, a shared sensory experience. It's about strengthening bonds.
And tea houses becoming social centers.
Absolutely. In China, Iran is mentioned too. And then you get these really unique local variations like Tibetan butter tea with salt and butter, essential for their high-altitude life.
Serving tea to guests seems pretty universal, though.
A core sign of hospitality, definitely. But the style varies wildly. You've got Irish breakfast tea, often a blend of African and Assam teas, brewed strong with milk and sugar.
In Sri Lanka, it's black tea, usually with warmed milk and sugar, maybe some ginger or jaggery in rural parts.
And think about Kazakhstan. Black tea with milk is traditional, served in these special bowls, pialas, with a whole ritual for guests called siayak.
You've got the chai wallas on the streets in India.
The chaikhanes in Iran, where people might put a sugar cube in their mouth before sipping. Even indigenous communities in Canada using local plants like cedar or pine needles for healing teas, getting vitamin C.
The form of tea itself has changed too, hasn't it? Compressed tea.
Yeah, like bricks or cakes. Made it much easier to store and transport, especially over long distances historically.
And then there's the modern convenience stuff.
Like bottled or canned iced tea, ready to drink.
Which brings us to that classic American invention, iced tea.
Born out of the heat wave, apparently. St. Louis World's Fair, 1904. Too hot for hot tea, so someone poured it over ice.
And boom, instant hit.
Totally. And look at it now. Americans drink nearly 50 billion glasses of iced tea a year. It's something like 80% of all tea consumed in the U.S.
Quite the journey from the Boston Tea Party to that statistic. Okay, let's talk about the money side. The economics of tea today are huge.
They really are. Global production is valued over 17 billion U.S. dollars annually. The trade itself is worth around 9.5 billion. That's big money, especially for many developing economies that rely on tea exports.
And it's still growing.
Looks like it. Projections show growth around 5.7% annually between 2021 and 2026, and people are actually drinking more tea per person. Globally, consumption's up 2.5% in the last decade.
Where's that growth coming from, mainly?
Driven largely by producing countries themselves, East Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Near East. It's offsetting declines in some traditional markets.
What about the impact of COVID-19? It seems like it was a double-edged sword.
It really was. On one side, demand actually went up. People saw tea as maybe having immune-boosting qualities.
Right.
But on the production side, things got tough. Fertilizer shortages, Labor issues, shipping nightmares, higher costs all around. It hit supply chains hard.
A key challenge mentioned is this glut of sort of basic tea.
Yeah, the production of just plain bulk quality tea is outstripping demand. That keeps prices low for the commodity stuff, which is tough on producers.
But there's an upside in specialty teas.
Definitely. Things like single origin, organic, unique processing methods, they fetch much higher prices. And farmers outside the traditional specialty markets like China and Japan are starting to recognize that potential and shift production. Demand for these seems strong, helped by rising incomes in developing nations and diversification.
But the core issue for many farmers remains livelihood.
This is the really tough part of the story. Millions of smallholders grow tea. They produce something like 60% of the world's supply.
60%.
Yeah, but many are still living in poverty. Their share of the final price can be incredibly low. We're talking maybe 12–16% for Kenyan farmers, and potentially as low as 4–6% for farmers in Sri Lanka or India.
4%! That's staggering. Are things like fair trade helping?
They're trying. Voluntary sustainability standards like Fair Trade or Rainforest Alliance aim to provide price floors or premiums. The data seems mixed, though.
How so?
Well, one study suggested fair trade farmers in Kenya might have gotten 15–23% higher prices in 2022 than the auction average. But during that same period in Sri Lanka and India, fair trade prices were sometimes apparently the same or even below the auction average.
So the market forces are still incredibly powerful.
Fundamentally, yes. Low auction prices, often set by just a handful of big buyers, still largely dictate the reality on the ground. These prices often don't reflect the true cost of production, especially sustainable production. And if there's an oversupply, like Kenya saw recently, farmers might not even get paid, even if there's a minimum price set.
So just growing tea often isn't enough income.
For many, no. Diversification is key. We see examples like intercropping growing things like peanuts or pinto beans alongside tea. That helps the soil and provides another income stream. Vietnam's doing some of that.
Any other ideas?
There's talk about using tea waste, the stems, the dust to create other products. Think vegan leather, paper, cardboard. Adding value right there at the source could potentially channel more income back to the farmers.
Fascinating potential. Okay, let's shift again. Beyond the culture and economics, what about tea and just us, our well-being?
Yeah, the health and practical side. The materials list benefits like helping with relaxation and sleep, digestion, providing energy and clarity, maybe easing cold and sinus issues, even detox.
What about specific findings? Antioxidants.
Definitely. Tea is known for its potential antioxidant power. And there seems to be pretty strong evidence linking tea drinking to a reduced risk of coronary heart disease. The link to cancer risk is also studied, though the findings, especially for black tea, seem a bit more mixed or balanced in the reviews we saw.
There are specific compounds involved, right? Flavinthriols.
That's them. Linked to heart benefits things like helping with blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar. The suggestion is aiming for around 400–600 milligrams a day.
Which is about?
Roughly 2 cups of black or green tea, give or take depending on the tea and brew strength.
And what about that idea that tea dehydrates you?
Mostly a myth, according to this. You'd need to drink a lot of caffeine at once, over 300 milligrams, like 6 or 7 cups, for it to potentially have a diuretic effect. Normal consumption is usually fine.
Okay. What else? Bone health.
Some evidence suggests a moderately positive effect on bone mineral density, particularly for older women drinking 4 or more cups daily.
And teeth. There's fluoride in tea sometimes.
There is. Very high levels in things like compressed brick tea could be a concern if you consume tons of it. But generally, even sweetened tea with fluoride at typical drinking levels doesn't seem harmful to dental health.
Of course, the big one for many is caffeine.
Right, the stimulant effect. It affects the nervous system, heart rate, can make you feel jittery. But tea generally has about half the caffeine of coffee.
Unless if you brew it weaker or shorter.
Exactly. And here's something interesting. In tea, the caffeine molecules kind of bind with other compounds called catechins. This seems to lead to a slower, more gradual release of caffeine.
Meaning less of a jolt and crash.
Potentially, yeah. More sustained energy compared to coffee or energy drinks for many people. The guidelines suggest capping daily intake at around 400 milligrams for most adults, 300 milligrams for pregnant women.
Good to know. Any downsides flagged in the health section?
Well, one large study linked drinking burning hot tea every day, especially combined with heavy drinking or smoking, to a higher risk of esophageal cancer. So temperature seems to be a factor there. alongside other risks.
And microplastics again.
Yeah, it's a growing concern. Some tea bags, particularly those pyramid-shaped silky ones, can be made of plastic or contain plastic sealants. Steeping them releases microplastics. Alternatives exist, but there's debate about how biodegradable they really are.
Okay, and a really important distinction to make. Herbal tea isn't technically tea.
Crucial point. Herbal infusions, chamomile, peppermint, rooibos, etc., are made from different plants entirely. Green, black, oolong, white, yellow tea all come from the Camellia sinensis plant. Different categories.
But tea, the actual Camellia sinensis plant, isn't just for drinking. There were some surprisingly practical uses mentioned.
Not their justs, like using dried tea bags or leaves as an air freshener. Simple, but effective.
Then for skin, cooling burns.
Yep, applying a cool, used tea bag to a minor burn or sunburn, or even adding tea bags to a bath for wider sunburn relief. Apparently, it might help soothe poison ivy, too.
I wouldn't have thought of that. What about cooking?
Tea marinades. Using cooled green or black tea with herbs and oil as a base for marinating meat? Sounds interesting.
And for personal care.
The classic one is putting warm, damp tea bags on closed eyes to reduce puffiness. It's the tannins doing the work. Also a tea foot soak for tired or smelly feet. And using leftover herbal tea and things like homemade soap.
Resourceful. Okay, finally, let's wrap up by touching on the big challenges facing the tea world today.
We mentioned some already, but yeah. Safety is a big one. Finding residues of banned toxic pesticides in some commercial teas is alarming.
And fraud seems to be an issue, too.
Unfortunately, yes. Things like substituting cheaper ingredients, adding undeclared fillers, or mislabeling the origin or type of tea. Powders are apparently quite vulnerable to this.
And the labor issues, the poverty trap for farmers, that persists?
Deeply concerning. Despite efforts like sustainability certifications, the fundamental economics often don't work for the smallholders.
And overarching all of this is sustainability and climate change.
Exactly. Climate change is already impacting where and how tea can be grown. Farmers need support to adapt and use more sustainable methods, but the market often doesn't pay a premium for that effort. It's a real bind.
Wow. So when you trace it all, this one leaf, its journey is just incredible. From ancient East Asia, tangled up in empires, shaping cultures, economies, right down to our personal health and daily habits.
It really is a story that touches everything: tradition, power, innovation, and these really significant ongoing challenges for the people who grow it.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Considering everything, the history, the culture, the economics, the millions of lives depending on it, the complex journey to your cup, what does the simple act of drinking tea really mean today? Maybe more than we usually consider.
Definitely gives you something to ponder next time you brew a cup.
Thanks for listening to All in All.